Right, so this is going to be the first run with some corrections to the torque converter. It was having a trouble blowing through the torque converter, so they had to send the torque converter out to the guy who does that. It's a new guy that they haven't used before, and he didn't know the car. The other guy, I guess, retired or something, but and he didn't quite give it enough whatever angle, so they redid it. We're gonna see if it'll not spin the tires, and also not what we're having a problem with. It was like almost like the clutch was slipping, but it was the torque converter slipping inside. It's called blowing through the torque converter, so we'll see if it goes down the track, and hopefully it'll do a decent time. The first time they got it tuned way down, and then today is just test and tune. So let's see how it does today, and then I'll let you guys know a little bit later. Let's check it out. All right, so we're on the line. Let's see how this thing goes. Like I said, it hasn't run a full pass with this engine mod, this frame yet, so before let's run some numbers, so we'll see what it does. And maybe they haven't got it right, maybe just won't know until it goes up there. Got to run at some point. This is test and tune, so we'll find out if we can do anything tomorrow. All right, we're going up. So starting out, this car has about 2,000 horsepower. They're not, that I'm aware of, running any nitrous. They only use that to spool the turbo. So if you hear it on launch, what happens is they run it up to a certain RPM, I don't know, it's 3,000 or 4,000 RPM, and then they squeeze it with nitrous for a little bit, like a little 100 shot, a good size 100 shot of nitrous. And then all of a sudden it revs the RPMs up and gets the turbo to build, like, say 15 pounds of boost to start with, and then once the car gets down the track, it goes up from there. I think they're running it into the 30s when it's running full, but they haven't been running it to the full boost right now. So you can listen to it in this clip, and then you'll see on the burnout when it goes through that two-step launch. Let me take you back to the beginning real quick, where this car came from. It started out, I mean, the whole race team and all that, started out as Dad's car a long time ago, George, and then he got in it, and, you know, it's not the same car, but it's evolved from there. He got in it, and it was about 5 feet shorter than this one. He got in it, and he was at the launch, and the guy in front of him oiled the track, and he was in there, and it was like 105 or so, and he's in a black suit. He's in the car, and he just realized, I got to get out. I can't. You're really cramped in that thing. You're tied in. Your hands are tied in. Your legs are tied in. Everything's tied in so you won't fall out of the car if it crashes. Your head, and it just, he was claustrophobic. You know, I could never get in that car. So he just like panicked and got out. He just couldn't do it. So then I guess his son Chad, volunteered to drive, and then he became addicted. It's kind of how it works. So Chad took over the car, and then as Chad got older, it became, of course, his car. Then now everything goes through Chad. It's Chad's car, okay? So he's, he's building this thing up. So they maxed it out. They started out with a 4-cylinder Volkswagen engine. They used to use the water-cooled Volkswagen, and they maxed out the horsepower with that, brought it to like 700 or 800 horsepower with that, or even more, I don't know. But they maxed that out, and then I don't know how it progressed, but Chad decided he wanted to put a V8, A8 or Volkswagen Touareg engine. They're both the same, and he put one of those in it, and then decided to progress it up to about 1200 horsepower in the smaller frame. And they got some real good times. And I think in that frame, I don't know if it's in that frame or this one, I'm not sure, but they've gotten, I think, a 666, 220 miles an hour in the quarter. I mean, that's some numbers there. And maybe there's better times, but I don't really know. I just remember those numbers. So they were kind of maxed out again because the frame was meant for a 4-cylinder, and what it does is the frame arches. So that's part of the way it gets traction, and it was chattering going down the track. So they were even having major difficulties just getting those times because of the frame wasn't right. So Chad decided to go ahead and buy this longer frame. And when he did that, he decided to bring the horsepower up to about 2,000 RPMs. I guess he went to billet aluminum rods and some other stuff. I mean, just crazy stuff. And everything in this engine is basically like backyard engineered or something, because it's not like a regular top alcohol car where you can just go and buy, you can run the whole thing the whole season on the engine, because they're, designed, they're race engines. This thing is like after a whole day or 2 days of racing, and the heads have to come off, the valves get a little tiny bit tweaked. I mean, it's just way too much for that engine. But it's funny, this has still a mostly stock Volkswagen crankshaft, mostly stock Volkswagen block, and it's aluminum, and it's tiny, and it's a 4-liter engine. Nobody's doing that with a 4-liter engine, putting out those kind of numbers. People think, oh, it's a V8. No, but this thing is a tiny little 4-liter V8, and they're putting out huge numbers with it. And they wanted to stay with the Volkswagen because that's what they grew up as. George had a Volkswagen shop. The kids worked there. When I was younger, I used to go there after my job, and then the kids would come there after school. And then I knew Chad and Brooks for years, since they were, I guess I'm about 5. I can't remember how many years older I am. I guess I'm 10 years older than Chad or Brooks. So I was like 10 years older than them, and their dad was 10 years older than me. So I used to help them a lot of times when they were kids after school with their projects, while I was doing other things at the shop, because George was always busy. And it was a lot of fun with those guys when they were young. I remember Chad built a sand rail at like 10 years old. The whole thing. I mean, I'm talking about welding it together. It was a kit, like all this tubing, and he like welded it all together. And we're on the floor of the shop, and he's learning how to weld, and he's like, oh, I'm not doing very good. I'm like, dude, you're as good as mine do, or better. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I can. He wanted to look like TIG welds, it was using MIG welder. But it was really, it was really fun. We had a lot of fun when we were younger. And then it's really cool to see these guys progress in this way, because this is really like unheard of, guys. This is like, in the Volkswagen world, these are records, okay? So they're going for a $599 in this car, and I think it's possible. The issue that they're having though, so that's the history of the car. The issue they're having right now is torque converter and transmission. So the torque converter, trying to get the stall speed right, and have it slip through. It's like doing clutch management, but you're using the fins inside the torque converter, and you're tweaking the fins different angles to get them to slip enough so that it actually doesn't burn the tires, and grip enough so that it doesn't slip too much. So it's kind of a mastering technique. When we were there, they actually had to take the transmission out twice. They took it out once, and then they figured out that this orifice that somebody told them to do, which they told them that you need to change the orifice size to a smaller orifice, was too small for the torque converter fluid. It was supposed to limit the amount of supply to the torque converter, but it was drying it out, and that was a bad problem. So they took the transmission out, went ahead and drilled out the orifice on it. On the other transmission, they had two transmissions there, so they drilled the other one out while they were pulling the other one. They got it out, put it all back together, put it in the car, fired it up, and by then this is like nearing the close of the track. They're trying to get one more run in so they could pull the data and then see where to put this, how to tweak the torque converter, because what was happening is it was drying out the torque converter, and they thought it was actually blowing through the torque converter. So once they got everything working properly, then they could actually start to do changes on the torque converter fins, or called stator is what it's called. So it's all together, they fire it up, and all of a sudden I look and I'm like, there's fluid. And so he shuts it off, and so we're looking at it, and he goes, who botched the seal? Everybody's kind of going, no, nobody botched the seals or anything, okay? So they fired it up again, cleaned it all up again, fired it all up, and two guys, one guy's on each side, both looking at it, and I could just see the spray coming out of the bottom of between the motor and trans. And what it was is, I guess that torque converter seal probably got pretty hot because there wasn't enough fluid in there, and actually started to leak because it's two halves to the torque converter. So right at the end of the race day, got to pull the trans again. So that night they went and pulled it again, pulled it out. We thought, well, the racetrack closes at 8. We need to make sure we're out of here at 8 o'clock, completely out, they said. So we just pulled it outside the gate. They went ahead and started pulling the trans out again, and we worked into like 9 or 10 at night, got it all done, fired it up, staged it at 10 o'clock at night, okay, and we're ready to go, after all night working. Not all night, but, pretty late. So anyway, they get out to the track, get up early, we're over there at the track, they go to run it, and so he gets up, they take it up to the line, they did the launch thing, they ran the two-step, it was working, everything seemed to be a lot better. But when they took it out the second time, they also loosened up the torque converter at the same time, because they realized that it was going to be, the fins were going to be too tight and it was going to hook up too easy, so they were loosening it up at the same time. So they put it all together, they go up to the line, and they pull down the track. He does a burnout. Right at the very end of the burnout, he puts it in reverse. And listen, when's the last time that you saw anything happen when somebody put their car in reverse? It just doesn't happen. It never happens. And that's, so when I get to the end of the video, I push the pause button. That's what I usually do when I'm taking drag footage video. As I get to they do their burnout, I show the burnout, and right at the end, when they go to back it up, it usually takes a while for them to line it up and all that stuff. I don't always film that, so I pushed pause, and that's when the explosion happens. Right when I push pause, so it's not on video, guys. What happened is the nitrous shot into the intake while it was at idle. As soon as he blipped the throttle in reverse, blew to smithereens. It It sounded like a stick of dynamite. It was loud. And so we didn't know what happened. So they go back to the thing, pull the data on the computer, and found out that the throttle position sensor was showing that it was at 92% when it was at idle. So the throttle position sensor was bad. And what happened is when you go from drive, because it's a 2-speed power glide automatic, when you go from drive and you put it into reverse, it goes through reverse and first at the same time, which is kind of like what they use at the launch. I don't know how it works, but it goes through that sequence, going through reverse and first, and then it goes into the reverse. Well, when they put it in reverse and first, the computer's going, launch. We're at 92% throttle. Hit the nitrous. So the so the computer squeezes it with the nitrous, and then we put it in reverse and blip the throttle. It sucked it in and bam, blew the intake to smithereens. So that's how that happened. It was totally a freak thing. Had nothing to do with any of the other problems that they haven't having. They're just trying to work it out. I know once these guys will get this worked out. And this car's longer, and it should hook up better. And they've already, like I said, at 1,200 horsepower, they've already had it hook up better. But when they did those changes, when they put the extra horsepower into it, it's going to make changes to the transmission. So the fins actually got bent on the old torque converter because it was just too much horsepower. And they've made changes to it now to try and bring it around, but it's still having issues. Once they get this worked out, and they will, then there's these things called, they're little valves, and they can adjust, they can dump the torque converter and stuff like that to adjust the amount of fluid and stuff like that. And when you get those things to work and all that stuff, they can manage it. And they'll be able to manage that horsepower. That horsepower in that car is between 6,000 and 10,000 RPMs. So down lower, it doesn't really do anything. It's only when it hits that boost, the higher RPMs, that's when it really starts to come alive. And then they can keep that in that power band and just run it down the track. And they've done it many times, and they'll do it now. And it'll be exciting. I thought they were going to actually get rid of the car because they were considering going top alcohol, but of course that car doesn't fit in that class, so they were going to put another engine in it, but the frame doesn't meet that class. I don't know all the details of all that stuff, but it doesn't meet it, so I don't think they're going to do that now. I think they're going to keep this car. So what's exciting is we're probably going to get to see it actually do those kind of numbers. And I'm going to try to be there to film it. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and like it. I'll talk to you guys later on. Throw up on the line. That's how we do. It's been a long wait. Take it up the lanes again. Well, right after I actually paused the video, because I was, he put it in reverse, and when he put it in reverse, the nitrous must have been stuck on, and it sucked, it must have filled up this whole tube with nitrous, and then right when he blipped the throttle to go in reverse, which I didn't film the reverse, it pushed it into the intake and exploded the whole thing. Right there, that whole top piece is gone. Full intake manifold's blown to pieces. Anybody wonder what happened? I know we were wondering what happened here. And what happened was the throttle position sensor was misreading and telling the computer that it was at 92% throttle, which at 90% throttle is when the computer senses it's on launch, and thought it was at 92% throttle because it was just misreading while it was just idling, and then when he just stepped on the gas to go backwards, sucked all the nitrous into the intake manifold. So it's just a part malfunction, believe it or not. Just the throttle position sensors right here, and that's all it was. It caused all this damage. We don't know what is wrong inside the engine. There's no way to, until you tear it down and do a compression test and all that, you know. You have to remake this back tube and make that depending on what he's going to do. So anyway, kind of a bad day at the racetrack. It, you know, had some bad luck in the beginning, and we got a couple steps forward, thought we were going to make a run, and then all of a sudden it's over. So anyway, that's the way it is. That's drag racing. Anyway, this was just tested tune anyway. Just trying to get this thing dialed in. Alright, talk to you guys in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.